Hi all, this is Piyush. So you must have seen the last two lectures. पिछले दो लेक्चर्स में हमने बुद्धिज़्म के बारे में बात की और जिस तरीके से हमने देखा कि बुद्धिज़्म like seems to be very important for the pre-examination. In the same way, Jainism is also very important for the pre-examination. So let's come and discuss about the Jainism, right? So again, we'll be focusing only on those aspects which seems to be more important for the pre-2024 rather than covering the Jainism as a whole, right? So let's start with Jainism. When it comes to Jainism, some of the basic details of Jainism. So Jainism before Mahabir was known as basically Nigranthas. That was the name. Why? Because they were free from bonds. It's being called as Jainism only after Mahabir because Mahabir took the title of Jina, the person who conquers the sense organs or the indris. That's why this person used to call himself as Jina, and that's how it becomes Jainism. So before before being Jainism, it was actually known as Nigranthas, right? And then further as Jainism. Okay, fine. So basically, as you all know, that there were 24 Tirthankaras in Jainism, and in fact Rishabhdev was considered to be the first Tirthankar. So Jainism in this particular regard stands very different from Buddhism. Why? Because Buddhism started with Gautam Buddha, but on the other hand it is claimed by Jainism that they have been Jainism was already existing since very long, and Mahabir was that person who was taking Jainism to the next stage. That's how we can see it. But actually what is true, that the Jainism was already existing, and there were 23 Tirthankaras were already there, and among them the first was Rishabhdev. So we will discuss about the important Tirthankaras also. There's something has to be noticed that Yajurveda, that's a very important information, does mention 3 of the Tirthankaras, and who all were they? Rishabhdev, that's the first one, and then Ajitnath, that was the second one, and Arisnemi. So these are 3 Tirthankaras which are even mentioned in Yajurveda. Okay, so further as you all know that Mahabir comes and something happens, and then finally what do you see? That Mahabir goes for compilation of or starting of a new powerful religion that's called as Jainism. Some basic details of Mahabir. So his birth took place in 540 BC. The place was Kundagram, a suburb of Vaisali. So he himself was from a Ganasanga, right, or a sort of clan, and his clan was known as Yantrik clan, sometimes called as Jantrik clan also. And his mother was basically Trisala, and she was sister of Chetaka, basically the ruler of Lichavi. So basically she was Lichavi princess. Okay. So after the death of his parents, he left home, and he was also married, though it's controversial that whether he was married or not, but it's believed that he was popularly it's believed that he was married. So we'll discuss about that particular issue later on. And then he leaves home and he is doing meditation for 12 years, and finally he reaches to conclusion that how to attain this nirvana, and that's how Jainism is coming into existence, right? So at the age of 42, after 12 years, Bardhaman attained enlightenment, which is called as nirvana also, and that's how he was being called as Jina, Arhat, or let's say he becomes another Tirthankar. So basically another name that has been used is Kaivalya. So here he attains Kaivalya, and this he is doing under a sal tree basically, right? And that was near this Rijupalika river, Jambik village, and that's how he is being called as Kevalin, or Kaivalya is the Gyan, Kevalin is the name what he had been using for himself, right? So Kevalin, Arhat, right, Jina, and then Nigranth. These are the various names what he had been using for himself once he is enlightened or he attains the nirvana. He died at 468 BC, and the place was Pabapuri, which is near Rajgiri. After 500 years of after Mahavir's death, in about 79 or 82 CE, a schism or let's say division occurred in Jainism in form of Svetambas and Digambas, right? So basically what happens, there was a famine in Magad, and in fact some Jaina followers or Jaina monks decided under the leadership of Bhadrabahu, they decided to went south to maintain their strict discipline, and that's how they are moving towards south. On the other hand, some Jaina monks under the leadership of Stulbhadra, they decided to stay back in Bihar or let's say this particular region. So Jainism is getting divided, that schism does occur in Jainism somewhere around third century BC. So basically what happens here, Magadha was affected by a famine, and then under the leadership of Bhadrabahu, some Jaina monks had decided to go to south, and that's how a good number of Jaina monks are moving towards south. On the other hand, other monks under the leadership of Surbhadra, they decided to stay back in Pataliputra. So once the famine was over, they are coming back, those who had migrated to south, and after coming back to this place, back to their original place, now that division or that schism does occur here, because everybody started blaming to each other that they did not follow the instructions, right, or the principles of Jainism, right. Okay, that's how this division does take place. Okay, fine. Now, moving to the next information, right. So, Jainism. In Jainism, as I have already told you, that how many Tirthankaras were there? 24 Tirthankaras. But then you don't need to remember all the 24 Tirthankaras. You have to just keep in mind few of them which are very important. Let's see them. So, there was first one is undoubtedly Rishabdev, who was considered to be the founder, right. So, he is also known as Adinath. Rishabdev or Adinath or Rishabnath, these are couple of names which are used for him. Now, whether he is a historical figure or not, that is a bit dicey, but as I have already told you that he is referred in Yajurveda. Okay, so meaning is Lord, Bull, or First Lord. These are the meanings. He is symbolized by bull, and the color used for him is the golden color. Second one was Ajitnath, right? So he is known as the invincible one, right? And then he was symbolized by elephant. He is also depicted with a golden color. In between, there is another Tirthankar that's very important. That's 19th Tirthankar. That's called as Mallinath. Now, who is Mallinath? It's very controversial figure, and that's why I have been discussing about Mallinath. She is she or he is bit dicey. Why? Because Shwetambar tradition believed, right, that woman could achieve nirvana, and that's how they believe ki it is Mallinath was basically a woman Tirthankar. On the other hand, the Digambaras did not believe in this concept, and that's why they believe ki yes, originally she was a woman, but then later she took birth in a male form, and then only she attained nirvana, and then she becomes first she becomes he, and then finally he is getting nirvana. But then originally the form in which he is getting nirvana is not the woman form, rather is the man form, right? And that's a Shwetambara and Digambara, both of them are believing in different tradition. She was the 19th Tirthankar, keep in mind. Okay, fine. Then it comes to 22nd, that's Neminath or Arist Nemi. So basically the meaning is the rim of whose will is unhurt, and then it's being symbolized by consul, and the color that has been used to depict him is black. 23rd Tirthankara is Parsavnath, again a historical figure, right? And he is being he is being symbolized by snake, and the green color is used to depict him. And finally is Mahabir. Mahabir, as you know, he is depicted by lion, and the color that has been used for him is the golden color. Okay. So these are the Tirthankaras that you need to keep in mind. Okay. Finally, it comes to the division in Jainism. So that we have already discussed that there is a reason because of what this division takes place in Jainism, and in fact here onwards you'll find that this division goes further, and some minor sects are also coming. But whenever it comes to Jainism, you always need to keep in mind that there are two important sects in Jainism. And when does it happen? Only after the famine in Magadha is over, and then the people, those who migrated to south, they are coming back, and then this division takes place. Sometimes it is also considered to be the first Jaina council where the first division takes place in Jainism. Yes, as I told you that it is largely being divided in Shwetambaras and the Digambaras. Let's understand what differences are there between the two. So people from the name itself it's very clear that here they started wearing the white clothes. Whether they decided to remain completely naked and perform austerity, tapasya, which is still being followed by good number of monks, the Jaina monks that you can find around you. Okay, according to this philosophy, attainment of liberation is possible for a woman. This is what I was trying to discuss with Mallinath, that according to them, woman could attain nirvana in the same form. And that's why they believe that Mallinath was basically a woman. On the other hand, when it comes to Digambaras, they do not believe in this concept, and they say no, women could attain it, but if the women are following Jainism in a very strict way, in that case, first they are going to take birth in a male form, and then only they could attain nirvana, and that's how this concept remains very different. Okay, people of this sect believe in taking food after drinking, after attaining enlightenment. दिगंबर्स इस पे बिलीव नहीं करते हैं. अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस ओपिनियन महावीर स्वामी वॉज मैरिड. दैट्स ऑल्सो वेरी लाइक कॉन्ट्रोवर्शियल एस्पेक्ट. तो जो श्वेतांबर है वो मानते हैं कि महावीर वॉज मैरिड. ऑन द अदर हैंड लाइक दिगंबर डज नॉट बिलीव इन दिस पर्टिकुलर कंसेप्ट. According to this opinion, the 19th Tirthankar Mallinath that I have already discussed. These are couple of differences. Both of them had later started doing the ideal worship, but initially it was started by Shwetambaras because they believed or they perceived Tirthankaras, including Mahavir, as God, and that's how they started worshipping. Later this was coming like even in Digambara sect also. Okay. Now coming to the Jaina Council. Now there's again very controversial aspect. Why it's controversial? Because somewhere you'll find that there are references of 5 Jaina councils, but in majority of the places you can find the references of only 2 Jaina councils, right? So these 2 are popularly accepted, and that's why we'll be discussing about only 2 Jaina council. So the first Jaina council is taking place in 330 BC. That is the period where this division takes place. The place was Patliputra and the chairman was Tulbhadra, right? And the patron was Chandragupta Maurya. And here the most important result is compilation of 12 Angas. This is one of the important part of Jaina literature. And here Jainism is getting divided into 2 sects also. That is what you need to keep in mind. On the other hand, the second Jaina council takes place very late, you can see 512 BC, and here you can find the place is Balabi. Now I think it's quite logical that why it's shifting to Gujarat side, because in this particular period, from the days of formation of Jainism to let's say 6th century, now Jainism was majorly being followed by the merchant classes or the trading classes, and that's how it's shifting to which part? It's shifting to Gujarat wala part, because there only you can find that major majorly these traders and the merchants were there. The person who actually chaired it is Devadhi Chamasravan, and what is the important result of this? The most important result is basically the final compilation of 12 Angas and 12 Upangas. In fact, you can give the credit to the second Jaina council which took place or which was held at Balavi. So the major achievements of this second Jaina council is the final compilation of Angas and Upangas, and rest of the Jaina literature which are considered to be the canonical Jaina literature, that also got compiled in the second council. There is a mistake, okay? It's not BC, it's 500 CE, of course, it's a silly mistake, it's a printing mistake that has happened, right? So it's 512 CE century. Now who patronized it, that we actually do not know, so there is no point of discussing about it, okay? Now let's move to another aspect, that's the scriptures, right? So we have already discussed that there are 2 important Jaina literature, and these are Angas and Upangas. Now if it comes to the Angas and Upangas, for understanding this, right, I can just tell you one thing. The way you have seen the Sutta Pitak, right, that is Anga. So it deals with basically the original principles of Jainism, that's Angas. Now what are Upangas? They are very similar to Brahmins. The way Brahmins were giving the further interpretation of of Brahmanism, in the same way Upangas are giving basically the further interpretation of all the Angas, and that's how there are 12 Angas, 12 Angas और 12 Upangas. मतलब 12 Upangas 12 Angas के साथ associated है और वो एक दूसरे को Angas को explain करते हैं. That is how you do know. But then in Jaina literature you can find some more literature which are there. So among them you can talk about basically there is Angas, Upangas. Then we can talk about one very important literature is Cheda Sutras. Now what is Cheda Sutra? It is basically very similar to Binay Pitka. So remember in this way, it deals with the rules and regulations of the monasteries, and that's how I am telling you that it's similar to what? It's similar to Binay Pitka. Then there is another important text that's called as Mula Sutra. Mula Sutra. So Mula Sutras, there are 6 Cheda Sutras, 4 Mula Sutras, and Mula Sutra is also dealing with basically dealing with the rules which are supposed to be followed by the monks. So it's very similar in nature, but always keep in mind it's related to monks and the monasteries. Then there is another text that's called as the Kulika Sutra. Now what is Kulika Sutra? That's normally called as the encyclopedia of Jainism. So remember it, which text is being called as the encyclopedia of Jainism? It's Kulika Sutra. And then finally it comes to 10 Prakininas, right? So these are basically certain literature based on various themes of Jainism. So it's not something, we cannot confine it in any particular class or category, rather it is dealing with the various aspects of basically Jainism, and that's how these are on 10 various themes, right? So 12 Angas, 12 Upangas, 6 Cheda Sutras, 4 Mool Sutras, 2 Kulika Sutras and 10 Prakarinas. This is the original or the canonical Jain literature. That's how you need to know, okay? In Jainism, you can find secular literature also. Of course, it is developing slightly late, but then it is there. Okay, so among the secular literatures, we can talk about the text like Acharang Sutta. That's a very important text, right? Then Sutra, Kritangas, and then Kalapa Sutras. These are very popular Jaina literature. Most of these early Jain texts were written in Ardha Magadhi language. So initial literature, if we'll talk about, they were being written in Ardha Magadhi. But the literature which got compiled later on, they were even written in Sanskrit and other regional languages as well, right? In South India, you can find that a good number of Jain literature had been compiled, and then of course they were compiled in the local literature. That you need to keep in mind. Okay, fine. Jaina's influence is strong in early Tamil literature, as I did tell you, and in fact, here you can find some of the important Jaina works in South India, in Tamil basically, is Naladiyar, right? Palamoli, then Jivak, Chintamani, it's very popular, okay? Then Yeparankalam, then Karikai and Nilakesi, right? These are some of the literature which got compiled in South India, and that's how it has been using different languages, okay? Of course, the South Indian languages, okay? Tenets of Jainism. Now let's come to the Jaina principles. Again, I won't get much into this. Why? Because you mostly know it. I'll just discuss some of the important themes of here, right? So some important things which are really very important. So I'll discuss about it. Okay, first of all, the simple Jaina philosophy is Three Ratna. Okay? I always used to say, what is this Three Ratna? Okay? KFC, right, knowledge, faith and conduct. Okay? थोड़ा कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी है लेकिन याद हो जाता है, ठीक है. दिस इज 3 रत्न ऑफ जैनिज्म एंड देन दीज आर 5 महाव्रतास. What are these 5 महाव्रतास? Ahimsa, you all understand. Asteyi, not to steal. Satya, not to basically to not to lie. And then Brahmacharya, celibacy. And then it is not to, it's aparigrah, that is not non-possession of the property. So these are 5 Mahabharatas in Jainism. This is a basic principle of Jainism, you all know it. Now let's discuss about some of the important parts of Jaina philosophy. Among the important parts, there are 2 important philosophies that you need to keep in mind. One is Syadavada. Now what is this Syadavada? And the another one is Anikantavada. These are 2 most important philosophy. Anikantavada. Okay, fine. The Syadavada is the theory of relativity. ठीक है, क्या है ये theory of relativity? हर चीज़ जो है एक दूसरे के relative aspect में समझना चाहिए. बस nothing is permanently और nothing is absolute truth और nothing is absolute false. दुनिया में कुछ भी एकदम सच नहीं है, एकदम झूठ नहीं, सारी चीज़ें relative होती है. That's a very important idea. अगर आज के टाइम पे आप इसको अप्लाई करेंगे तो आप इसकी यूटिलिटी समझ में आएगी, तो आपको समझ में आएगी. तो दिस इज थ्योरी ऑफ स्यादावादा कि यूजुअली लोग कहते हैं ना, ऑफ कोर्स इट वाज गिवन इन in terms of the religious philosophies, but then it can be applied anywhere. So this is the theory of relativity. Nothing is absolutely truth or absolutely false. Everything is partial, relative and conditional. So everything you can decide or you can interpret with respect to certain basically with respect to certain other thing. That is the theory of relativity. Anekantavad, there is the manifoldness of anything. Anything can be interpreted in multiple ways. Seems very similar, but then these are different meanings. आप इतना याद रखिएगा, theory of relativity and then manifoldness of anything. That's called as Anekantavad. These are 2 very, very important philosophies. Okay. There is another important philosophy in Jainism, that is about the basically the world. Okay. Keep in mind few things. According to them, the world is permanent, right? As Buddhism, as Brahmanism, it does not believe in that concept कि earth or the universe is being created, then again it's getting destroyed, then the recreation of the world, they do not believe in this concept. According to them, it's permanent, it is always there, right? But then there are 2 different kind of things do exist here, that's called as Jiva and Ajiva. These are 2 different kind of बॉन्डेज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में भी इसको डिस्कस करते हैं, हम नहीं जाएंगे अभी उतना फिलोसफिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, ठीक है. दैट दुनिया को वो लोग 2 हिस्से में डिवाइड करते हैं, जीवा और अजीवा, मतलब 2 तरीके की चीज़ें इस दुनिया में प्रेजेंट है. From the name itself, it's very clear that what is Jiva and Ajiva. Now, what is to be noticed here, which is very important, that according to them, soul, does exist in Jiva and Ajiva both. That's the most important thing. इसी वजह से अगर वो कहते हैं कि पत्थर में भी एक तरीके का soul होता है, that is how Jainism believes. So this you need to keep in mind. So when you talk about the important philosophies of Jainism, these are certain things that you need to keep in mind. So couple of other things. They believe in the concept of soul. They believe in the concept of basically soul and rebirth also. So both the concepts they believed in. The second thing, whether they do believe in the God or not, they do not believe in the concept of Vedic gods and the Vedic literature also. And that's how they do fall in the Gnostic category. But later on, the concept of God, like Buddhism, does appear in Jainism also. And then Mahabir, along with the other Tirthankaras, considered as God only. And that's how you see some important principles of Jainism. Okay, fine. According to Jainism, Nirvana is very similar, the similar fashion, the way we have seen in Buddhism, the same we can discuss for it. Okay, fine. Now some other important information for Jainism. Okay, now patrons, कहाँ से इसको patronization मिलता है? चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य के बारे में सभी जानते हैं, ठीक है? मैं उसके अलावा थोड़ा बात करना चाहता हूँ. Grandson of Asoka, that person called as Samprati, and he is known for patronizing Jainism, and under his patronization, ultimately Ujjain becomes one important centers of Jainism or Jaina religion. Okay. The second major center of Jainism was Mathura. After Ujjain, you can find Mathura becomes another center, and that's how when you talk about Mathura school of art, it is very much related with Jainism also. Okay. Then another important ruler was Kharvel of Chedi dynasty. Chedi ruler Kharvel from Kalinga. He was a great patron, and he is known for these two great contributions. That's Udaygiri caves and the Khandgiri caves near Bhubaneswar. These are two caves dedicatedly or they are precisely dedicated to Jainism. That's important thing. Okay. In Khajuraho's temple, you will find some influence of Jainism. In fact, there is a temple, right, which is related to Jainism. So though Khajuraho is coming from Brahmanism, but still it's having some influence of Jainism. Here I would like to tell you one thing, that later on you will find some sort of synchronization between Hinduism and Jainism, and that's how this kind of interchanging is very frequently noticed in India. Okay. Then there is another very important temples that is Dilwara Jain temple. Of course, it is of early medieval 11th 12th century this particular temple was constructed. Okay, then there is a very important shrine is Shravan Velgola, that is in Karnataka, and when the Jainas migrated to this place, actually this was this place only. So for later on, somewhere in early medieval period, there was a ruling dynasty called as Ganga dynasty, and the ruler was Rachamal IV. But उनके जो prime minister है called as Chamunda Rai, he built this particular statue. This statue is of the son of first Tirthankara, Rishabdev, that's called as Bahubali or Gomteswara. So this is his image basically. Okay, and after every 12 years, the Mahamastaka Abhishek, ठीक है, okay, and the time period was 10th century, ठीक है, Mahamastaka Abhishek is being held. ये काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट सेरेमनी है, और जब भी ये होता है यूपीएससी एक बार पूछती है, अभी 3-4 साल पहले हुआ था, तो नाउ इट्स नॉट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू. ओके. There's another very important caves in Sittanvasal. Categorically telling, this is the only cave which is precisely dedicated to Jainism. Otherwise, in most of the places you'll find the the influence of other religions also, but Sittanvasal को एक ऐसा cave कहते हैं जो precisely उसके लिए जो है dedicated है, और ये कहते हैं कि this is the temple of Arihats. This is one another name of which has been given to it. Okay, so this is another important that you have to keep in mind for Jainism. These are some important images that you can as I have told you, that you can download it from my Telegram group. Okay, so basically this is the Sittanvasal cave, some of the important images of Sittanvasal cave. This is Adinath temple of Khajuraho. So within the campus you can find one Jain temple. This is the image of Gomteswara. Okay, now some important Jain text. Among the important Jain text, some we have already discussed. Now some important. Kalpa Sutra is a very important text written by Bhadrabahu. Parisist Parvan, very important. This has been asked in UPSC couple of times. Is written by Hemchandra, right? Then Syadavad Manjari is Malli Sen. Dravya Sangra, that is Nemi Chandra. Then Tatvat Sutra, that is Uma Swami. Then Nyayavatara, that's Siddha Sen Divakar. Nyaya Deepika, Dharma Bhushan. then Slokavartika, Slokavartik, that's Vidyanand Swami, and then Panchvisatika, that's Padmanandi, and then Pravachansar, that is Kunda Kunda. So these are some of the important texts that you need to keep in mind. Of course, like Parisas Farman I have already discussed. Apart from that, there was like another text that's called as Trisakti Lakshana Mahapurana. That's another important like text that is written by Jinisena. He is a very important person. Okay, that's all about this Jainism. So these are couple of information that you need to keep in mind for Jainism. Okay, thank you very much.